Looks like we're live. All right, good morning, mediums. This is season 2, episode 39. Welcome to Live here on Keystroke Medium. I'm Scott Moon, here with my co-host Ralph Kern. And today, the best-selling author of the Void Wraith Trilogy, the Deathless series, and a long list of very successful nonfiction books for authors, Chris Fox will be joining the show. Chris made a big entry into the world of military sci-fi with Destroyer and has been holding station on the bestseller charts ever since. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, guys. It's good to see you.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
This is a special episode. Regular fans will know that, I was pretty nervous about getting that started because normally Josh launches the show and I'm thinking, man, I'm really nervous. Why am I nervous? Because Josh is watching and he knows I'm going to
There's smoke coming out of Scott's ears.
I know. Oh, the adrenaline's incredible. I can't believe it. So anyway, so we're rolling and I'm just so happy. Everything else from here should be gravy. A lot of the people in the chat, in the live chat, and a lot of our other, thanks, Jinx. Tom Hickok says Jinx. So most of us are familiar with Chris. He's very well known in our community, but would you mind just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself for some of our new viewers or people that maybe are here for the first time?
Sure. So if you're not familiar with me, I had a full-time job as a software engineer, and I think this is a familiar story for almost everybody, where I had 60 hours a week where I had to work, and it's really, really difficult to write around that kind of lifestyle, but I found a way to do it, and I put out my first nonfiction book called 5,000 Words Per Hour. And basically, it taught how to maximize efficiency and how basically, since I only had an hour a day, I was still able to write novels. But much to my surprise, the novels themselves started taking off and doing extremely well. So I focused more on fiction, and this whole journey, which I never expected in the beginning, worked out well enough that I left my day job last February, and became a full-time author, and have been doing that ever since. So since then, I put out a book called Right to Market that led directly to me writing Destroyer to market. As you said, it took off. It did extremely well, for which I'm very grateful. And ever since then, I've been cranking out more books. So it's a lot of fun being a full-time author. Parts of it are harder than I expected. But this is kind of the dream we're all after. And I can tell you it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan, and I've been looking at your books. You kind of have the total product. You got these great high action space opera, military sci-fi books. You got the great book covers by Tom Edwards. Still, were those the Destroyer?
The first series, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The first series was by Tom, who we've had on the show, and we love Tom to death also. So that's pretty awesome. Destroyer did take off, but right now you're doing the first book. You just released the first book in the Ganog Wars. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
So you want to tell us about the new book and kind of how it relates to the other series that you've written?
Sure. So the other series, it's a trilogy with a hard ending. So it all builds up to the same point, and there's very much the equivalent of my Death Star at the end being dealt with. This new series, the Ganog Wars, picks up with the same characters, and what they've decided now that the coalition of united races, I call it, has recovered. They're starting to explore the universe around them. They want to know if there's any other big space empires they should be aware of, and spoilers, there is. They run smack into a superior foe and have to figure out how to deal with it. And this go round, I wanted to take a little bit of a different tact. I was a fan of BattleTech growing up, love Mech Warrior, love all the books. I still have like 30 plus BattleTech books on my shelf. And so this time around, I gave my protagonist mechs, and working that into the series was a tremendous amount of fun. I've got Godzilla-sized kaiju as well. It's really kind of a mishmash of all my favorite science fiction tropes, and it's been pretty well received in the few days since launch.
That's really well depicted on the book cover. I know, and I think Ralph is going to talk to you about your 12-week trilogy here in a minute. But I did notice from that you buy the book covers before you write the book. And in this case, you bought some pretty incredible ones. So how did you decide what you wanted, or how you did that book cover process?
I think with the book cover, you need to deliver what your fans want. And that's going to accurately convey what the book is about in a way that they find attractive. So I know that my existing fans for Void Wraith really, really like spaceships on the cover. I mean, who doesn't like to see an awesome Tom Edwards spaceship? Since I was venturing down a slightly different path, I wanted them to see that you were going to get something a little different. So I found an amazing artist on DeviantArt and started getting, mechs, and I call them planet striders. They're my like Godzilla-sized kaiju monsters onto these covers, because if you like action, if you like the kind of books that I've already written with Voidwraith, you're going to see that and be like, huh, that looks kind of cool, and it's a little bit new and unique. So I just made sure that the covers have a new topic, mechs, not starships, and that they are kind of unified, so you can see that on the branding.
And I remember from that, you took one piece of art from your cover designer and you made it 2 book covers. Can you tell us how you did that?
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise. For the first piece of artwork that I had this artist do, I did it as a paperback cover, and so it's this full wide spread. And originally, the right-hand side of the image was meant to be the cover, and I did use that. It came out great. But I looked at the left-hand side of the cover, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's really cool. It shows off a planet strider. So I took that and I used that as the cover for the reader magnet. So I hadn't intended originally to do that. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for a cover for my reader magnet, but ended up getting kind of 2 covers in one, which is really cool.
That's cool. A brilliant 2-for-1 really there, isn't it?
So since then, I've been kind of capitalizing on it. And now on the additional covers, I'm sort of building in 2 covers in one on all of them. So this has given me a lot of extra artwork to work with.
Kind of worked in your process.
Okay. I'd like to just talk about the process of the Ganog Wars, because this has come out of one of your self-imposed challenges, for want of a better phrase. 12 weeks to a trilogy, wasn't it? Would you like to just tell us a little bit about your 12 weeks to a trilogy challenge and how you went about it?
Sure. So the 12 weeks to a trilogy was a desperation move on my part, because I was slacking off entirely too much. And I knew it. I hadn't put out a book in a little while. And I'm like, okay, income's starting to fall. It's time to do some work. So I decided I was going to try to write 3 full books. And when I say write, I mean both write and edit in a 12-week period of time. And I had a whole system for how I was going to do this, and decided that I would record a video every week showing people what my word counts were, sort of how things went, how the plotting was happening. And I walked people through this process. So at the beginning of my 12 weeks, I had very little and knew almost nothing about what I was going to write. And you get to see through these videos me building a universe and then writing the books. This is the last week of that challenge, and I'll give spoilers a little bit early, so you heard it here first. I'll probably fail. It looks like I'm not going to get that 3rd book done in time.
Oh.
But I'm totally okay with that. If it takes me an extra week to finish the 3rd book, that's fine.
You know, you've only got 2 books in a 12 weeks. That's awful slacking off, that is.
Yeah, it's hard to be upset.
when you first said you were slacking off, I'm like, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to accuse Chris Fox of slacking off or not being able to produce this quality, because you've also done your nonfiction books as well. Now, I followed your 12 weeks to a trilogy series quite a bit, and there's some episodes that talk about different things. What were some of your major successes and challenges during the 12 weeks so far?
So probably the biggest success is seeing how much better your books are if you're writing them in tandem. I've heard of other authors doing this for many, many years, where they would write 2 or 3 books before publishing the first one. And it really did result in a much richer universe. I think the books and the story and the characters were all far, far better. So in that, I think this series is more successful. And I think that that's really kind of carrying through in reviews so far, where people really like it because it all makes sense and it all lines up. And I think that I kind of failed to do that with Destroyer. So Destroyer was a great book, but it took me longer to get out the sequel. And the sequel maybe wasn't quite as good. I think the 2nd book in my trilogy was the weakest. Now, I think going forward, I'm always going to make sure that I write at least the first 2 books in a series. So that was kind of the big win. For my biggest mistake, I think it was releasing the books when I did. If I had waited and not released the books at all, and instead of focused on publication, just kept writing, then I would have finished all 3 books in the challenge.
During the challenge time.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, because as far as your launch so far, you seem to have gotten pretty good visibility. You have a lot of people buying the book. Book 1 is doing pretty well, it seems like.
Yeah, I just sold my 2,000th copy a little while ago.
Oh, fantastic.
So not bad for 5 days.
Not bad for 5 days. All the authors in the chat are going, oh my God, I'd like to sell 2,000 books in 5 days.
Yeah, absolutely. So jealous, so jealous. Okay, and so I mean, one of the things to really pluck out of what you said, and being the author of a trilogy myself, but I did it sequentially, is that I imagine it's sometimes nice to have that, be able to do that self-referential stuff. So you know, I've had it before where I've written myself into a corner with one plot point and then really struggled to sort of bring it back round in book 2 to where I needed it back in for book 3, for example. Would you suggest that that's a massive advantage before publication?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I ran into that twice. One of the ways that I saw that, I have a character in the second book who suddenly became very, very important. And I didn't realize they were going to be important. So they're barely in book 1 at all. I think I had maybe 2 mentions of them. So I had to go back to the first book and put in like 5 more chapters from this character's point of view, so that when we get to book 2, you actually, you know, kind of feel for who the character is and you like them and you sort of want to see what they're doing. If I had just published book 1 without being able to make those changes, I don't know what I would have done to solve that as a dilemma. So just having that freedom to fix stuff in earlier books before you release is really nice.
No, sorry.
Go ahead, Ralph.
I was going to say so the 12 weeks you said you had, and I've seen some of your videos, but you said you had a rough idea of where you're going. But generally, would you say that this series was planned well and planned within that 12 weeks, or was it pantsed as you went through the 12 weeks?
It was planned as I went through the 12 weeks. So kind of what I do, and this comes from many, many years of being a Dungeons and Dragons player, when you're running games every week for players, you have to know all the major villains and players in your world. And you just sort of ask yourself logically, well, what would these people do if this event occurred? And so what I did as I was building the universe during these 12 weeks is just started asking, who are the major players in the Ganog Imperium? You know, what are the nameless ones that they serve? And the more stuff that I fleshed out, the easier it got to figure out what everybody's motivation was. And it sort of adds kind of a rich backstory to what otherwise would just be a fun action story.
Excuse me. We have a question from the live chat, and I'd like to get more Ralph's questions, but I also want to get everybody covered who's came to watch. J.R. Hanley asked, do you think existing authors should wait or try to keep books coming as quickly as possible?
I think it depends on whether or not you're going to be able to push the first couple of books. If you've got some advertising dollars and you can arrange some mail swaps with a few other authors in your genre, and you can get some eyes on the books, then yes, absolutely wait and release, you know, 2 books fairly close to each other. If you're not going to get that sort of eyes on your books, it's totally okay to just put it out 1 book at a time. And ultimately, I think it's going to vary depending on who you are. So Todd Hodges, if you guys aren't familiar with him, put out his first novel, The Never Hero, and it took him over a year to get the second book out. And both of those books, I think, are still in the Amazon top 1,000. He, you know, Amazon just like backs a truck up to his house and dumps money in his driveway. So just because you see one person doing it one way, I think don't feel like you have to do it that way. If you can hold 2 books back, great, do it. But if not, don't feel like it's going to make or break your success.
Okay. Cool, great. Just a term that you used a little bit earlier that we might benefit from having explained is reader magnets. Tell us about what you mean by a reader magnet.
Sure. So this was a term that, so far as I know, was coined by Nick Stevenson, who wrote a free book of the same name. And it capitalizes on a concept that was, I think, first pioneered in network marketing, and it was called a lead magnet. The idea is that you give somebody something for free that they like and find useful in exchange for their email address, and that way you can email them whenever you have a product to sell them. So in the case of authors, you give them a reader magnet where you want this reader to be on your list. And usually it's a short story or prequel novella or character artwork or just something that people who like your books are going to find compelling enough to sign up to your list. In my case, for this trilogy, I wrote something called Planet Strider, which is a 12,000 word story that goes over one of the characters' backgrounds. And he's a very popular character. So a lot of people want to know, well, how did this character get to be involved in this adventure? Anything you can do that ties into your main narrative will work, but just having something to give away to people will dramatically increase the number of signups that you see.
And was that done within your 12 weeks or was that done previously?
That was done within the 12 weeks. So I had plotted out the prequel before the 12 weeks began, but the first day of the challenge was me sitting down and just cranking out 8,000 words in Planet Strider.
Okay.
How should writers, whether they're science fiction writers, urban fantasy, or historical fiction or nonfiction, how should a writer go about finding kind of their tribe or the readers they're trying to reach? Because I know in a couple of your books you talk about data science and the purity of data science and also bots and things like that. Do you want to talk about that, or is that outside the scope of our interview today?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So I would recommend becoming the reader that you want to find. If you want somebody who's going to read your book, in my case about, space opera, about, Tigris and Ganog and the races I've created, and is going to like it, I need to find people who already like things like Star Wars and are reading similar books. And the best way for me to do that is to read the same thing that they're going to be reading right now. So not what they're reading 5 years ago or what they read, last month, but going to Amazon, finding the books that are hot today, buying them, and then actually reading them and seeing sort of what these people are getting, what kind of entertainment they're craving. Because unless you know sort of what they're into, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to locate them. I think that's where a lot of people get lost. It's really more about becoming your ideal reader than it is going on a quest to find them.
So should I just broadcast my book to everybody I know, whether they read science fiction or not?
Yeah, that gets into the data science. No is the quick answer. You want a targeted audience because the way that books are sold has changed dramatically in the last few years. It used to be all about numbers. The more books that you sell, the more visibility you get. So that's what you want to do. Now, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes at Amazon that most people are unfamiliar with, where Amazon will present your book to people that it thinks likely to buy them. So if you have a highly curated, highly targeted list of science fiction readers, and those are the people that are buying your book, Amazon's going to show it to more people like that. And that's why my book right now is doing as well as it is, because they've started that process. If you tell everybody about it and you advertise to the entire free world, I mean, think about the commercials that you watch during the Super Bowl, or just during an evening TV show. How many of them are relevant to you? I don't need to know about tampons. I never will. I'm sorry. So that kind of shotgun advertising really shoots you in the foot now. Now you want to do it like Netflix does it, where they show you exactly what they know that you're interested in, because it works for you. You want to see that stuff, and it works for them because you're now consuming their content.
In the defense of tampons, I have heard that you can use them to plug a bullet hole, and it's like for first aid medic stuff. It's kind of a secret hack if you ever get in a gunfight.
Is this your excuse, Scott, and you're sticking with it as to why you carry around it?
That's why I'm at Walgreens at 3 a.m. buying them in bulk and stuff. Anyway.
Hold my beer. I'm just going to go get some tampons.
There you go. I've read your books, and I find all of that very, very useful. A lot of the stuff that's in your nonfiction books for authors is very actionable right away. I know that you have exercises in each chapter to kind of do some of those things, like find your reader group, find what would be something you would enjoy. First of all, enjoy writing, if I understand the process correctly, and then also that has a reader group that's looking for it. I think that behind the lines, obviously, you know who your readers are, so that's a good place to be. I think a lot of writers would love to get in touch with their best fans, I guess. It
takes a little practice to get there, but it's worth investing the time. And if you put out a book and it doesn't do well right away, that's cool. All of us have been there. Nobody, or very few people are Andy Weir, launch your book right out of the gate. And usually there's a story behind the scenes you didn't know about that person. So put out the first book. If it doesn't do great, put out the next one and keep trying and keep learning about your audience. I mean, Destroyer was my 6th novel, and that was the first one that really took off. So it's just, persistence and perseverance.
How is your Deathless series doing now? Is it picking up as you become more recognizable as an author in general, or is it
not at
still
all
kind of separate?
Not at all. I do sell some of the Deathless series because I'm using ads to do it, but not very many. It's my worst performing series, and that's because readers don't really know what they're going to get when they see the books. You see this first book, it's got a werewolf on the cover. Very few people are still into werewolves. And so it really puts people off. So my next nonfiction book is called Relaunching Your Novel. And I break down why Deathless isn't selling and what I'm going to change to make it sell. And just a bit of a spoiler, I guess. It needs new covers and it needs new titles. My covers are amazing. My titles are funny. I love Vampires Don't Sparkle. But if I want to sell this book to the right audience, the audience that will really, really love it, I need to change the branding dramatically.
We may have to get you on one of our Thursday night shows and delve into that process. I know that is probably a need a lot of people need filled. I know lots of people I personally know several people who have backlists of books that they're like, I'm not quite sure why this didn't hit the mark. And I'm one of them. So spoiler. So I'll have to get with you later on that.
You're werewolf buddies, aren't you? You've got a werewolf.
Oh, I have a werewolf one, but yeah, it's not clearly marketed. Let's just not even talk about it because it's branded horror. I mean, I got a great new book cover for it, but what you get from what I've renamed that book so many times and struggle with the name, and we'll work on that in another episode maybe.
Yeah,
I'd like to know, does anybody in the live chat have any questions, final questions for Chris before we kind of start wrapping it up? I haven't really been monitoring. Oh, except for J.R. Hanley has a useful question right there. He says, can I borrow the money truck?
So we've got a new friend to say, like, someone wants to say hello to you.
Oh. What's the new friend's name?
That's Hector. Hector. He'll be starring in one of my next books.
I have a reliable authority, a la Dean Koontz, that putting an animal in your books is a good way to bestseller.
I will note that. I will note that down. Yeah. Okay. Just a sort of gentle reminder, I suppose, of the books we're talking about today. So Chris has released a series called the Ganog Wars. You can read the first book, Planet Strider. The first novella, Planet Strider, and then go straight on to Behind the Lines, and then Hold the Line, and then when do we think the third book, Press the Line, will be out, Chris?
Press the Line should be out the first week of June, so it'll be 4 weeks after book 2.
Okay, fantastic. And then, is this series likely to go on, or is it going to be boxed off at Press the Line?
It's going to keep going. So originally I did 12 weeks to a trilogy thinking this would be a trilogy. And then as I wrote, I realized it's not. It's a series. So I need 5 to 6 books to tell it. So I'm just going to keep writing the books in the series.
We'll have to get back to you for updates. Terry Toombs says that, Ralph, you have an adorable kitty. Guy Anthony DeMarco says, hello, Chris. Thanks for your weekly updates. I'm assuming he's a pretty big fan of your YouTube channel from those comments. We have...
Tom saying the same thing. Tom Hickcott.
Yeah.
Apologies,
very good.
I got your name wrong, but
I recognize most of these people.
He wants to say thank you for the weekly YouTube videos.
Yeah, excellent. So, Chris, thanks for coming on the show. Can you tell us kind of where people can find your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. All my stuff, my central hub, if you will, is chrisfoxwrites.com. I post links to my YouTube videos. I do marketing articles for writers. And then, of course, all my books are there. So all my fiction and nonfiction, it's kind of a bloated site. I need to trim it down a little bit, but you'll find everything you need at chrisfoxwrites.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Everybody, if they would let us know what you thought about the show in the comments below, and be sure to give us thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We'd love to hear from you. For Ralph Kern, I'm Scott Moon, and we've been live with Chris Fox. Be sure to come back and join us next time as we talk about reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Media.
Goodbye, chaps.
Thanks, everyone.